Okay, so what do you guys remember from the last time that we read?
That's harder.
So
She started a petition thing, and then
so she
talked.
So she got kicked out of the bus, I think. And then they started like a girl thing, that they were talking, I think she was passionate about she broke the bus.
Right here.
good. So Mrs. Robinson gets kicked off the bus, or she runs off from the bus because she gets scared from the bus driver. She joins a women's political council, and then when she becomes the head of it,
She calls the mayor,
good.
and they have a conversation, but then the mayor doesn't do anything about it. He just says, "Oh, okay, yeah." And then
Good.
eventually, it doesn't do anything, and then they don't go on the bus for a very, very long time.
Okay, and then there's something else that happens with Rosa Parks. What happens with her situation?
I think she went to jail because she.
Oh yeah.
She got hit.
She was in the bus and she wasn't doing what she was supposed to do.
Good,
Like that's when we get out, but she was like, no, she was defending herself.
good.
And the police and arrested her.
And she was in jail.
So she got arrested. That's what's happening right now. She got arrested. She calls home and she tells her mom to call her husband, but her mom ends up calling. So the first word we're looking for is Nixon. Her mom ends up calling on page 16. Her mom ends up calling Mr. E.D. Nixon. So Mr. Nixon is a leader in the black community, page 16.
Mr. Nixon?
Good, yes. He's good. So, the mom calls him and lets him know what's going on. The next word we're gonna look for is DURR. D-U-R-R, DURR, on page 17. 17. Good. So the name is Clifford Durr, and it's a friend of Mr. Nixon, and he's a white lawyer. Okay, do you think that would make it easier or harder?
Harder.
Being a white lawyer helping
Oh, easier.
black people.
Oh, harder.
Is it?
Like
It's
it's kind of
easier
white
for who?
White
black
Mr.
people.
Nixon and them. Good.
Is Mr. Nixon?
But Clifford Durr is a white lawyer. That's a friend of Mr. Nixon, okay? So they're working together to try and get Mrs. Parks or Rosa Parks out of jail. And then while this is all happening, there's a ruling. So the next word is ruling on page 17. Ruling. R-U-L-I-N-G. Good. It's kind of towards the middle.
Just like
Around here. Ruling. Good. So while this is all happening, there's a ruling that segregated schools are no longer legal. So it's not legal for schools to be segregated. If the buses are segregated, what do you mean? What do you guys think it means if the schools are segregated?
Then the students has to go to different classes.
Good. It's actually only the all-white students can go to one school. So that's like, for example,
dogs and cats.
yeah, so let's say that Mountain View is a middle school and Glendale's a middle school. All the whites can only go to Mountain View and all the colored people would have to come to Glendale. That's what it means by segregated schools. The buses are like different though, right? Because it's all one bus. But what?
Even Mexican people come here.
Yeah, they're colored.
They'd be here because
Everyone's
it's
colored.
colored. So like,
What
the
if we-
buses are what? Segregated how? It's in one bus, but
The black people, well, the colored people in the back and the white people in the
But
front.
if your
Good.
skin is white anyway, you just slide that you're right.
I don't know. There was a lot of I think it's a little bit hard. But colors and whites is what's going on during this time. So the ruling says that segregated schools are no longer allowed. That means colored people and white people are all gonna be in the same school like how they are now, right? And so they're trying to see if Rosa Parks will help them desegregate or mix the buses, just like they did the schools.
Same thing as Martin.
Yeah, this is all the same time. So the next word you guys are looking for is decision on page 19.
Decision.
Decision. It's gonna be at the top of page 19.
Oh, really?
Good.
Second sentence.
It's gonna be on this line. Good. So they're telling Rosa Parks like, oh, maybe your story can help us desegregate the buses. But now Rosa Parks has a decision to make, right? And it's not an easy decision because what could happen to her if she, good, she could go back to jail. What was it?
She could go back to jail forever.
For a longer time.
She could be
You know, people can hurt her. People could even kill her because of what she's doing, right? They don't want to change, and she's pushing for a change, right? Yeah, that's when she went to jail. So the last word we're looking for is protest. On page 19, protest. When you find it,
It's over at the end.
it's gonna be towards the middle of the page, around here. Around here. So Rosa Parks is making a decision, but she has a lot of things to think about. And while this is all happening, people are still protesting. So people are still going against it. People are still just making everything harder for her to really decide. Okay? So let's go back to page 17 and let's do some echo readings. Fingers on when, follow along. When he heard that Mrs. Parks had been arrested, he got busy. He called the jail to find out why she'd been arrested, but the jailer would not tell him. So he called his friend, Clifford Durr, a white lawyer. Fingers on when, voices together.
When he heard that Mrs. Parks
Had been arrested,
he got busy. He called the jail to find out why she had been arrested, but the jailer would not tell him. So he called his friend Clifford Durr.
Clifford Durr, a white lawyer. Good. Fingers on together, follow along. Together, Mr. Nixon and Mr. Durr got Mrs. Parks released from jail. Mr. Nixon paid a bond that allowed Mrs. Parks to leave. He would get the money back when she came before a judge to be tried for breaking the bus law. Fingers on together, voices together.
Together, Mr. Nixon and
Mr. Durr got Mrs. Parks released from jail.
Mr. Nixon paid a bond that allowed Mrs. Parks to leave.
He would get the money back when she came before a judge to be
tried
for breaking the bus law. Okay, let's try that again. Fingers on together, voices together. Together, Mr. Nixon and Mr. Durr
got Mrs. Parks released from jail.
Mr. Nixon paid a bond
that allowed Mrs. Parks to leave. He would get the money back when she came before
a judge to be tried for breaking the bus law. Good, remember it's Mrs. Parks, so MRS is Mrs. Okay, fingers on Mr. Follow along. Mr. Nixon believed the law was unfair too. He wanted to put a stop to it. As he talked to Mrs. Parks, he had an idea. In Washington, D.C., the Supreme Court had just made a ruling. The ruling said that segregated schools were no longer legal. That meant black and white children could no longer be sent to separate schools. Finger on Mr. Voices together.
Mr. Nixon believed the law was unfair too.
He wanted to put a stop to it.
As he talked to
Mrs. Parks,
he had an idea. In Washington, D.C., the Supreme Court had just made a ruling. The ruling said that segregated schools were no longer illegal. That meant black and white children could no longer be sent to separate schools. All states.
So you guys are gonna read together from all, and then on the next page at 19, you guys are gonna ask your questions, okay? So you guys can start now. But remember, you guys are reading together, not separate.
All states. All states had to obey this ruling. If segregated schools aren't illegal anymore, Mr. Nixon thought maybe segregated buses aren't either. I think we can break down segregation.
So you're gonna start at all and read until.
What happened? No idea. Same thing that happened.
You can't look back. You can't look back. Wait, can you look back? All states. Wait, what ask the question?
She got
Just try to remember what we just read. Okay, so all states.
All states agree to obey this ruling. If segregation for segregated schools aren't legal anymore, Mr. Nixon thought maybe segregated buses
And then they said,
aren't either. I think we can break down segregated schools.
Segregation, good.
On the bus with your case, Mr. Nixon told Miss Mr. Nixon told Miss Parks it was a hard decision for Miss Parks Mrs. Parks to make if she stood up to this segregation law.
Bad thing.
That thing was
On the
my
bus with your case, Mr. Nixon told Miss Parks it was a hard decision
again.
for Miss
She might
Parks to
be hurt
make
or even killed up to walk with this law.
Bad things might happen to her. She might lose her job. She might be thrown in jail again. She might be hurt or even killed. She wanted to talk to her husband about it. Mr. Parks was very upset. He knew all the dangers his wife could face. She had already been arrested just for refusing to give her seat to a white man. By carrying the contest further, his wife would be asking for serious trouble. The white folks will kill you from the visit.
She said
For
he
white
wanted her to let the matter drop.
serious
But
trouble.
Miss Parks was very brave. She wanted to do something to help the black people from running. She wanted to make the city a better place for everyone. Our vote, along with Mr. Nixon, Mr. Nixon and the other black leaders began making plans. They were going to show that Miss Parks would not have been arrested. Okay, so the reason that happened that Miss Parks,
Good.
She
said
said
had a pardon to make. She didn't want to be killed. She could have lost her job. She could have gone to jail. They could hurt her. But she wanted to do something. She wanted to do something.
Good, so can you tell me what's happened so far?
what happened so far is that she wanted to, so they took off the laws from segregated schools, and then she wanted to take off the law from segregated bus stops, and then she was gonna protest, and she wanted to talk to her husband, but her husband said that she shouldn't do it because then she'll be targeted.
Good. Okay, let's finish page 20. Did you guys finish page 20? 19? 20.
They were going to show that Montgomery's black citizens weren't going to accept the bus law anymore. They were going to show that black citizens were going to accept the bus law.
Good, okay, so what did you get so far out of everything I just read?
I'm so happy.
What happened in the whole story?
What happened in the whole
From that little page?
Or even from her husband was afraid that she'd be targeted, but now what's her goal? What is she really doing?
No, stop.
She black citizens were going to accept the bus law.
What were you guys talking about?
Well, I was asking him if he said something about that
The black citizen in this page, they weren't good. They were gonna accept the bus law.
Good. They're trying to change it. What else did you guys talk about?
that she has a big decision to make, because if she made the decision, she could lose her job, she would go back to jail, and she could get her even killed.
Good.
She got released from jail.
She just got released, right? And she doesn't want to come back. Good. Okay. Let's see. I'm sorry. That's for next time. Awesome. Can you guys maybe think of another theme?